Welcome to In the News for October the 3rd, 2025. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. You know, you said it's the third day of October, but in some ways I feel like it's the first day of October, first day of fall. And I say that because I walked outside this morning, Brett, in New Orleans. It's 71 degrees. It's cool. Like I feel like we don't have leaves change colors down here in the South in New Orleans. But if we did,
Right.
I feel like I would be looking and seeing orange and yellow and red leaves. It's got that nice crisp feel to it. So I like it.
Maybe you're seeing orange iPhones instead.
Aha.
That's the pumpkin spice latte phone. Well, that was a couple of weeks ago. We'll come back to those products, although we've talked a lot about them already. But I was thrilled to see another announcement from Apple today. I know they've been working. I mean, we've been talking about AI as in artificial intelligence, but also Apple intelligence is the way that they're coming at it. But today you just had a brief mention about the Apple Foundation model. It's not like Apple is like, sleeping on their laurels here. It's like they're continuing to push forward. But they released this foundation model. And I see here it unlocks new app experiences powered by Apple Intelligence. And then you linked also to another interesting app here, Locally AI. And I just thought that this was really interesting the way you started off your post today.
There's just so much interesting happening in the world of AI. The one that we just hit the news this week, I think it's near the top of the App Store, is this new app called Sora, S-O-R-A, from OpenAI. Have you seen this one that, you upload your image and it makes, you can say, hey, I want to have me, I don't know, riding a boat or, climbing a mountain. And it creates these videos that are, it's a little uncanny valley, but they're still incredibly realistic. But like, I love that people are doing interesting things with AI. And, I know that Apple sometimes gets a bad rap because it doesn't have a lot of the whiz-bang flash features that, some of its competitors do in the technology space. But I do like Apple's approach to AI in this respect, that, Apple knows that everybody's got these incredible supercomputers in their hands, the iPhones primarily, and especially with the brand new iPhones that, the iPhones that came out a couple weeks ago are really made for AI in that the iPhone Pro especially can run cooler for the reasons we've discussed, because the unibody design and the thermal thing with the water vapor chamber. And I've absolutely noticed that it makes a huge difference. Plus, they have more RAM on them as well. So like these things are really made to do local AI. And so Apple has this local foundation model that's built into iOS 26. It's already there on your phone if you have iOS 26. And it's basically like a large language model right there on your phone. And so you can use it for anything. And so the press release that Apple released this week is talking about how third-party apps can use it. So like if it used to be that I'm developing an app, and if I wanted to have AI in it, well, the app developer, I'm gonna have to pay for a license from Claude or OpenAI, ChatGPT, one of those sorts of things to use it. But now they don't have to pay for anything, which means they don't have to pass that cost on to the user. They can just tap into the LLM that's there on the phone, and it's not quite as powerful as at this point. It's going to get better over time, of course.
Yes.
But it can do, if you just want to have, like, if you have a calendar app and you just want to be able to have an AI that understands like the events in someone's calendar, so it can help to plan something or to answer historical questions about things you did in the past, having a local AI to do that makes so much sense, because it's unlike just a simple find feature that looks for text. The AI can actually understand concepts and things and can make the app more personal. All this does is it makes your app act more like it's your friend. I mean, it can talk to you. It understands what you're saying, can speak things to you in ways that make sense. It can understand concepts. And so I love it. And the list of apps that Apple has in this press release, none of these to me are like the name brand apps, they're small ones, but these are just some independent developers who are starting out, and it will get better over time. And, so anyway, if you want to see it yourself, even if you don't use one of these apps, the app that I recommended folk to check out here is called Locally AI, which I believe has been around for a little while. And what the app does is it downloads. Traditionally, it would download an AI from, Gemini has like the Google Gemini open source version of their AI thing. You can download it. But because of the Apple Foundation model being built in iOS 26, you can download this app, which is like a 5-second download. It just uses the LLM that's already right there in iOS 26, and you can ask it questions. And because it's all local, It's completely private, which is the big advantage of these other third parties using it, is there's no issue of like things that you say are being sucked up by Google and Google's learning who you are and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Completely private. It's incredibly fast because it's all right there on device. And it just works. I mean, you can just ask it questions. It's the same way people love the Chat GPT app. I don't use it this way. You and I have talked about this before, that, some people
Right.
just have these conversations with the Chat GPT app, and that's fine if you want to do that. But you could do the same thing here. You could either type to it or you can talk to it, and it can talk its responses back to you if you'd rather hear it than see it. But if you just like type or talk and just see the responses, it is so fast. I mean, just as an example, I was playing around with it this morning, and my son and I have been watching and rewatching, in some cases, all the Mission Impossible movies on Paramount Plus. And so
Ooh,
I just
nice.
asked it, what was the best Mission Impossible movie? And it says, oh, well, critics usually think this is the best one, but people also like this one because it was really funny. And I'm like, okay, if we really enjoy the Mission Impossible movies, what are some other movies that are
Uh-huh.
similar? And
Exactly.
like, instantly it gives me a list of 7 different movies, and it's the ones that you might expect and some that you might not think about, James Bond and stuff like that. And it's just like, but again, it's not that what it gave me was the most insanely useful thing. It's just that it works quickly, it's fast, it's on device, nothing has gone onto the cloud. I could be completely off the grid and all this stuff would still work. And so
Yeah,
it
that's a
gets me
great point.
excited for the future. And this is what I really want, is not necessarily the locally AI app, although that's a fun thing to play with. It's free, check it out. But I want more third-party apps to take advantage of this tool
Yes.
that Apple has given them, because I just, the end result is a year from now, 6 months from now, we will just have these apps that are more personal. They're more working with us. It's really cool stuff.
I was just telling you right before we started recording my experience over the weekend. I was down visiting my mother and I had a
Hmm.
rental car. Well, it turns out the least expensive rental car was an electric car. It was like a Volvo C40 or something. I had
Hmm.
never driven or had an electric car, but Jeff, I have to tell you, there's a different level of stress when you're driving around and you see it's almost like your iPhone battery. Like when it starts getting down to 30%, you start getting a little nervous. Like, where can I find a plug? And I got to tell you, that was almost the same experience that I had because I'm out in kind of rural central Texas and I'm just like, I don't know where I can find a plug to plug in. And if I do, how much is it going to cost? Do I have to have a certain kind of plug? Because, there's a Tesla adapter and there's a regular adapter. And this is all stuff that I did not know, Jeff. So what I was doing when I was driving is I opened up ChatGPT, and sure enough, there was like almost, I call it like an interaction button. I mean, you can
Right.
type into it just like you were saying, or you can like dictate what you want to type as if you were doing like a Google search, or as many people know already, you could just jump into this mode that lets you just have a conversation. And it was as if I had an expert sitting in the passenger seat, Jeff, that had spent years of their life focused on electric vehicles and were able to answer any question that I had about what app that I can use, where's my map, how much is it generally going to cost, what kind of car, what kind of an adapter should I need. I didn't know any of this, and could have been potentially stranded, except by the time I got to the Buc-ee's in Texas, where they actually had a charging spot. I knew everything I needed to know. I knew exactly where to park. I knew which ones there was a Tesla kind, and if they didn't have the right adapter, I could go over to the Mercedes Benz kind, and I was able to do that. I had a general idea of what it was going to cost. To me, that was just amazing. Like, but here's the point that I'm getting to. That was on ChatGPT, just a regular app. In fact, I'm still just using the free version of that, and I had to be connected to the internet in order for that to work. There was a couple of times where I wasn't connected. And so I was sitting there waiting for the answer. And it was just simply because it was having to access this large language model that's stored in the cloud in these mega data centers, right? And so the fact that that's the angle I came at this morning from what you were talking about is you're right. If we could have almost, you could call it a small language model. It's like a small model that can get downloaded. And in fact, on this locally AI, as you mentioned, you can download the Llama model from Meta, the
Hmm.
Gemma from Google. You can get the DeepSeek model. Or when you open the app, you can say, no, I just want to use the Apple Foundation model, which again is not going to be as anywhere near as comprehensive as what you could find if you went to OpenAI's ChatGPT paying for it in the professional
Hmm.
level.
Hmm.
But you don't necessarily need all of that all the time.
Yeah.
And again, just like to your point, it's just going to get better. It's just somebody said this a while back, today is the worst that Gen AI is going to ever be, right? Every day it's just
Yeah.
going to continue to
Yeah.
get better.
Good point.
And these apps and this capability on the device, meaning that any of my inquiries that I was doing about electric vehicles isn't going to go back up to the cloud and get stored and and get used for training. It's just now everything's going to stay locally on the device. So that was just a long-winded way of saying how excited I am about this, because just seeing that power and being able to hold that power in the palm of my hand and access it there without having to worry about am I connected to the internet or not is pretty
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, and it's just it's these little things of AI that excite me. And again, I know there's the big AI features, and those get all the news, but I perhaps am more interested in just sort of supplementing things, just making everything a little bit better. We're not
Right.
trying to go to the moon with these. The things that excite me is just incorporating it in there, making things just work a little bit better. And this is what this type of AI, local, on-device, private, part of the operating system is just, it's fantastic for. So I'm excited about it.
The last thing quickly I wanted to ask about this, because you mentioned this, and I think this is where Apple was addressing some of this, is that now apps could literally have access to some of the general information, your personal information on the phone. In other words,
Hmm.
was it Bella Ramsey? When she had that commercial, right? And it
Yeah.
was like, well, Apple Intelligence, the promise was that it was going to be able to access your calendar to say who was that you met with 2 months ago having lunch or something, and it could
Hmm.
access that information. But Apple cut that off, right? Because we didn't want to
Yeah.
give ChatGPT or other Claude models or anything else access to that personal information. But now with this foundation model, you just barely mentioned this. Now apps like this Smart Gym here, or there's one that's Stoic, a journaling app, for example, they can access maybe your health information or your calendar information, and you have that promise of privacy on the iPhone for that.
Yeah. It's not quite what we saw in the famous Bella
In the
Ramsey
commercial,
commercial that had to be pulled back.
right?
And the rumor is that Apple, Mark Gurman at Bloomberg, who's Mr. Rumor, has been talking about how Apple has like its next version of Siri in development that might be coming out next spring that is going to presumably get us some of what Apple told us we were going to get a long time ago and is still in its
Uh-huh.
works. And so, these apps still can't quite get there. But you're right, they can access some of it. A workout app can access some of your workout stuff and use it
Right.
with Apple Intelligence and stuff like that. And it reminds me of the feature I was talking about recently that we now have the Workout Buddy feature, and I have been noticing that, like, as I'm just, on the treadmill and stuff like that, I like that Workout Buddy will talk to me and say all sorts of interesting things. It's a good start to your Sun. I mean, I know it's nothing all that extraordinary for the app to know that today happens to be Sunday that I'm on the treadmill, but it just says, oh, today's Sunday. You're starting off your week really well. Here's some interesting thing. This is the longest that you've gone, or this is
Right.
the your heart per minute is different today. It's all these different little insights that it just sort of when it has access to all that sort of stuff, it can just sort of come up with something interesting. None of it is revolutionary, but it all enhances the overall experience, and I like it.
Good way to put it. All right. Well, I didn't mean to spend that much time on it, but it is interesting how it almost feels like that Apple is kind of doing an in run maybe around like a traditional AI approach, which is what everybody
Hmm.
thinks that they should be doing. And it's almost like surreptitiously they are providing components and tools to be able to access AI, whether it's artificial or Apple intelligence. Anyway, that was just pretty interesting. I got so excited about it. I forgot to mention quickly that we appreciate our sponsor today, Lit Software at litsoftware.com. We'll talk a little bit more about the different apps that you can get for your, not just your iPad, but they also work on your Mac today. And we appreciate their sponsorship. Well, let's move into a few other things as we just keep seeing these little stories bubble up about, of course, the new devices. We've been talking about the new iOS 26, which I'm still getting used to. I'm mostly liking it on everything, but this is a great article you linked to from Tim Hardwick at MacRumors. 26 hidden iOS tricks to change how you use your phone. There were some good ones in here.
Some years when we have the big updates in the fall, There are not as many new features, and some years there's a ton of them. And this is one of those years that there's a ton of them. And of course, you have the big features that you can't ignore, like liquid glass, but there are all of these little tiny features that make life better. Any one of these could be future tips of the week for us. But so I've been
Yes.
really enjoying people that compile a whole bunch of them. And this is a good example of a whole bunch of them. And some of these we talked about before, like selecting part of a text in a text messages instead of other
Yeah.
ones. And another one that he talks about here is all the features that you can use for reducing unwanted interruptions in the Messages app. And just to pause on that one, I have now been using that. How long was iOS 26 been out? 2 weeks now or something. And I'll tell
Something.
you,
Yeah.
it's really working for me. Like
Same.
it was
Same.
so annoying when I'm sitting there doing something, because when I get a text message, I usually pay attention to it no matter what I'm doing, because sometimes it's something important from my wife or
Sure. You
or
never
you
know.
or something else. But so there's nothing more annoying than looking down and it's this unsolicited, political text message that I could care less about, or maybe it's a vendor that I actually do care about, but it's like, come on, I don't want you interrupting my workflow right now. And so
Right.
nowadays, all of those things they're just going in the background. And so I will just sit there and at some point in the day, I'll look at the Messages app and I look at the top right where they have the three lines. And
Uh-huh.
then it'll have like a little indication on it that there's some messages in there. So then I'll just look and I tap on unknown senders,
Yeah.
and then I'll
There it
see,
is.
oh, okay, here are the things that I got from the unknown senders. And none of them are important, and some of them are totally spam, and I'll delete it and say report spam on it. But it
Exactly.
just reducing those interruptions, oh, I like them. And then the other one about the telephone thing, I've been using that too. Like I've gotten to the point that if you call me and I don't know who you are, if you're not in my book, I don't even want I don't want to hear from
Right.
you. And the phone helps with that. And so those are some really nice features.
So, Jeff, can I ask real quick on that screen
Hmm.
messages? I'm the same way. I loved it. In fact, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, I went in and I did the exact same thing. I went into like the unknown in my messages and I just did like the delete and block, report spam, that kind of a thing. Now, what I like about it also is that it doesn't show a notification on my iPhone screen when I get one of those messages. It just kind of like
Amen.
hides it in the background. However, I've noticed, and I'm just wondering, I do see the notification on my Apple Watch. Now it doesn't like come up and tell me, but if I
Hmm.
scroll down on my watch and I look at the list of notifications, I see it listed in there. You haven't had that at all? You
I
haven't had
I
any
haven't
issues on
noticed
that?
it one way or the other. So
Okay,
that's interesting. And now that you've said that, I'm going to look out for that. And because you're right, you would think that they should sync together, and the Apple
right.
Watch
And
ought
that's I
to
was wondering.
only, yeah.
Right. I didn't know if I had like a setting or something in there because again, it doesn't like come on my watch face as if it's a new notification. But if
Hmm.
I swipe down and I look at all the notifications on my Apple Watch face that I had missed, then I see it in there, even though it's not on the notifications on my phone. And I know that I have mirror iPhone, right? That's one of the options in the Apple Watch app that you can do on that. Okay, I just wanted to check on that because
Hmm.
I am loving that too because I do not want to be interrupted. And just like you, I never know who's text messaging, whether it's family or friends or colleagues or whatever else. And I always want to make sure that I look at it if there's something that I need to see. But I've just really been enjoying that. But then those notifications, which is like something doesn't look right. But maybe that's just getting all fleshed out on there.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'll have
what
to
a
look out for
couple
that.
of the other ones
I'll
from
I'll
this
mention
list that
also
were
it's
good.
the very last one on this list, which is it's the feature that he calls it is stop maps from tracking your visited places.
Oh
And my
yes, I
spin
saw
on
that.
this would be the opposite. Start maps. This is the default. It's turned on. And I mean, what he's suggesting is, let me talk about
Here
what
it
the
is,
feature is
all
and
the
then what
way.
he's talking about. The feature
Yeah.
is that the Maps app now takes note of places that you go to. And so in the future, if you like, what was the restaurant that I went to, or what was that thing? Because Maps
Right.
knows it
Right.
because you were there, it will allow you to sort of, it's almost like, have access to like a journal, not a journal because you're not writing about it, but just the fact that you went there and when you went there and stuff like that. I consider that a useful feature. And because of Apple's approach to privacy, I have no problem with that. It's going to be private. It's on device. Apple is not learning that I like to go to restaurant ABZ and selling that information to third parties. I have no concern about that. So I am fine with it. Now, the feature, his spin on it here is that if you're not thrilled with that idea, even though it's private and it's on device, you can turn it off, and he tells you how to turn it off. And so, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously to each their own. If that's not something that you like, I know a lot of people like, I just don't want my device knowing all that stuff. Well, that's totally fine. So it's good to know that the feature is there, because if for
Right.
some reason it doesn't float your boat, go ahead and turn it off. but I do like that it's there, and because it's brand new, it's only been 2 weeks of data for me, but I do look forward to, a year from now being able to go back and say, oh yeah, what was that place that we went to? What was that store that we went to on Magazine
Right.
Street or whatever, and having that information. So I think it's pretty cool.
There were two in here that I did immediately. One was, I think it was like send photos in messages. There's a setting that instead, oh, here it is, send photos faster.
Uh-huh.
So you can send low quality photo previews as if you're sending a picture in messages. And I went
Mm-hmm.
and did this. You can go to the settings and the apps and messages, and you can turn that on because if they said, if you're traveling with limited cellular data or using a metered data connection, the recipient only gets a compressed preview version, but they can still download the high resolution image if they wanted to. And I like that because we tend to send quite a number of messages, and I feel like that was just a really cool aspect on there. Are you looking
Yeah,
at it
it
right
looks like
now?
it's yeah, I was looking on my phone because it looks like it's off by default. So
It
I haven't
is
turned it on yet.
exactly. Yeah. So I was
Interesting.
going to try that. That's
Haven't tried
that's
it
one
out
I
yet.
saw on this list. I'm like, wow, I didn't know about that, and I wanted to try that. And then one other quickly, I just wanted to. I had already found where was it here? Oh, save physical card details in wallet. So I'm a big fan
Hmm.
of the Apple Wallet. I know you are as well, and I
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
a lot of my credit cards in the Apple Wallet, so I can select the ones that I want. But you can get in and you can just get like some, you could in the past just get some basic details about the card, like you obviously,
Hmm.
in fact you can't, sometimes you couldn't even see the number unless you did the Face ID. But
Hmm. Hmm.
now you could put in information such as the expiration date and the security codes in there, because typically you didn't store that information, right? Apple Wallet had it on the back end and it was encrypted and locked and everything. But in some cases, I keep everything in one password. And so I haven't moved everything into the Apple Wallet because I can go to my one password and I know that's where I can find like the expiration date or something in there. But I did see this, and for one or two of the cards that I know I use quite often, or I want to be able to access that information, you can now go in and you can add some of those physical card details in wallet. And typically when we say that, it's that CVV code, right? That three numbers, like a lot of times you have to do with the expiration date, because that's an easy way for you to look it up if somebody's asking for that information on there. I
This
like
tip
that
caught
one
my
too.
eye as well, Brett, for the same reason. I have been doing this for years with 1Password. If you
Sure.
use 1Password or some other password manager, I highly encourage you to put all of your credit card details in there for a number of reasons.
Yes.
First of all, it means it can
Yes.
automatically enter it for you on a website and save you a lot of time, which is nice. It's a private place to store it there. But I mean, the number of times that I have had to have my credit card information for some reason, and I didn't
Right.
have instant access to my card. Maybe I didn't have my wallet with me or something like that. It's like, oh, I don't care if I have my wallet with me. I have my info right here on my phone. So ridiculously useful. So I love that feature in general.
Yeah.
If you don't happen to have a password manager, and you should, but if for some reason you don't, or you're using Apple's, whatever, then definitely take advantage of this feature for the wallet, just because the idea is you want to have this at your fingertips so it's there
Yeah.
when you need it. It's just that for me, I've been doing this for years with 1Password.
Apple Wallet just continues to get so useful. I mean, again, it's like the only way that I get my boarding passes. There was
Hmm.
something else that I just added, like, you have all of your membership cards in there. But the
Yep.
other thing, I don't think you reported on this, but I saw a couple of stories this week that we are potentially getting closer to Apple Wallet being able to incorporate U.S. passports in there, so that not only can we add, we've talked a lot about how driver's license can be added or IDs can be added from certain states, but
Hmm.
U.S. passports, once that starts getting in there, that's pretty good. Although I don't know how much people will trust it, because even though I have my ID from Ohio in the Apple Wallet, the 3 or 4 times that I've tried to use it that way, usually at the TSA checkpoint, they're just like, no. Like
Yeah.
they don't even know what I'm talking about. So what do I have to do? I have to get out that silly physical card again and show them. And it's just like, come on, man, I'm trying to be a tech nerd here. But I don't know. It's just, I saw that some people were reporting on that today, and just continues to get interesting on that.
You talk about TSA checkpoints. There's a feature that for me in Louisiana, we have a separate app called LA Wallet, but there's this thing
Right?
called
You've talked about that.
Share MDL with TSA. It's a way that like if you want to just use your phone for TSA,
Oh,
you can you get like this little QR code that you can hold up and stuff like that. I've only used it once, but my wife has used it a couple times and said that it works well
successfully?
just to have.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
okay. Well,
she has
great.
used it successfully. I can't remember if it works in every airport or whatever, but anyway, there's
Yeah.
options that are out
Yeah.
there to look into if you're a frequent traveler.
Good list here. We'll make sure we have it in the show notes. But that's
Mhm.
not all. As soon as 26 came out, We had a slight, ever so slight upgrade to 26.0.1.
Hmm.
These are very small upgrades, updates, but very important ones, typically for security. I don't know if this was like all of that. I think these were mostly bug updates, right? I don't know necessarily
Yeah.
security, but just little fixes for Wi-Fi, it says, cellular and camera issues on iPhone 17 models.
Yeah, all the testing that Apple does with iOS 26 over the summer, and yet when they release it to the wild and they go to millions and millions of users instantly, then they're going to discover things that weren't discovered before. And a lot of these, like you say, were connectivity issues, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, things that would sort of lose connections and stuff like that. And so they're just little bitty patches. I always rush and install the new update the second that it's available
Same.
because that's just me. But if I was a more prudent person, what I would probably do is wait, whenever iOS 26 comes out, wait for 26.0.1, or maybe even wait to 26.1 whenever that comes out,
Exactly.
because by then some of the showstopper bugs are gone. Again, for me, they haven't been showstoppers, they've been minor bugs. But if you had little bitty issues in there, then, now we have 26.0.1 to fix a few of them. And we'll obviously have other updates coming soon as they fix things.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday who had not upgraded to 26, and that's okay for all the reasons you just said.
Hmm.
However, if you are still running iOS 18, Apple did release 18.7.1. So, in
Yeah.
other words, these are important updates that if you're still not on 26 for all the reasons that Jeff just said, it still is necessary to go and do an update because, again, these are things that would apply no matter necessarily what iOS that you might be running right now.
And it's worth mentioning that too, Brett, because if you have your iPhone and you go to update it and you go into the settings to update, so like
Right?
by default, what it will do at first is offer to update you just to the new version of
Exactly.
iOS 18. You need to sort
Yep.
of go to the
I saw
bottom of the
that.
screen and say, oh, no, 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 I want to make the big update all the way to 26. Because if you're not paying attention, you might think that you're updating, and you are updating, but you're updating just the bug fixes to the last version of the OS, not the new
Exactly.
one.
Yeah. Great point. Now, the last few weeks, we've talked a whole lot about the new iPhones, the new Apple Watch. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but a couple of articles that you linked to I thought were really good. Now that this is a story from Juli Clover at MacRumors, 2 weeks with the iPhone Air. Is the ultra thin worth the compromises?
Yeah.
I think generally she says yes, or she actually has a video here from Dan Barbera at MacRumors. Great video, by the way. But they
Mhm.
just go through talking about what their experiences have been over the last 2 weeks using an iPhone Air.
Now that it's been out there and people have been using it, I have been fascinated. The things that I've been reading, like this article, and the things I've been listening to, and like podcasts and stuff like that. And it's really interesting. I mean, a lot of people I have heard say, I love the iPhone Air. It's my favorite iPhone ever. It's so thin, it's so light, it feels like the future. It does everything I need, and the features that it doesn't have are things that I don't really care about. And that's a totally legitimate opinion. And then I see people, and I think maybe Julie leans a little, not to say what her opinion is, but I feel like she has some of this comes through in an article of saying like, it definitely has some real compromises. And, you may
Yeah.
decide that given how expensive it is, you might as well pay a little bit more and get a lot more features, even though it's a bigger package, or a
Right.
little bit less and get the incredible, because the iPhone 17 reviews have just been fantastic this year.
Still
It's the
good.
entry level phone, but it has so many fantastic features that used to require the Pro. And so it's a polarizing device that for some people is just perfect, and for other people it's not worth it. And I think that's great. I love that we have a rich enough ecosystem that that's the case. You think of the iPhone Air and it replaces the spot in the iPhone lineup. Last year
Yeah.
we had the entry level phone, and then the plus version of it with the bigger screen, and then the two models of the Pro. And so that regular phone with the bigger screen, we don't know because Apple doesn't reveal this information, but the sense of it, the anecdotal reports is that that wasn't a very popular device because people like, if you're going to get a bigger screen, just go ahead and get the Pro. And so it wasn't a big seller. And so Apple, that's no longer part of Apple's lineup. And now instead they have the Air. And I mean, it's the same idea. It's that in-between device that for some people is going to be too many compromises, but for other people is going to be just right. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that Apple is offering the choice. I'm glad that they have decided to release the iPhone Air to the world so that people have that choice. And I think that it's something that's going to be, even more and more people are going to be walking into Apple stores over the next 6 months, 12 months and seeing this device and say, wow, this feels great. This is what I want. And they're just going to get it.
Yeah. It's just picking it up. is the main thing, the biggest seller. It's like, go pick it up and you'll see why.
Hmm.
You also link to another article from David Sparks at MacSparky.com. Just always very nice and succinct. Some thoughts
Hmm.
from David as to why Apple has even released the iPhone Air. He looks at it from a little bit more of an existential kind
Hmm.
of an approach here, but I love his thoughts on this.
I agree with his conclusions. I mean, it's somewhat, first of all, if you just want something really thin and light, this is the perfect phone for you. And that's one reason. But then he also says, and I totally agree with this, it gives Apple the opportunity to experiment with this new design that they
Yes.
will improve over time. I mean, we always remember, that one of the, we've had the original iPhone, which was so iconic. We had the iPhone 4, which was a big leap forward. The iPhone 5 made it taller. The iPhone 10, which was the first iPhone to not have a button on it and have that big screen. Apple comes out with these new, I mean, in some ways, the iPhone looks the same as it always has, if you just from sort of a 10,000 foot
Right.
level. But there have been big changes, and this is one of them. And so this iPhone Air, even if the iPhone Air is not for you, you should be happy that Apple came out with it, because it lets them experiment with
Right.
this and see what they can do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the last thing he said is what everybody said, is everybody thinks that Apple is coming out with a folding version of the iPhone next year. In fact, there was a story this week that somebody at Samsung had announced that they have a contract with a big American manufacturer that they're not going to name who it is. We're like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
probably Apple, to come out with a screen for a folding iPhone. And so there's, people really expect that a year from now we're going to have a phone that sort of opens up like a book. And to do that, you have to have something that's much thinner. So everything that Apple is
Yeah.
learning about the
Yeah.
iPhone Air, making it thin. And I will tell you, Brett, even though the iPhone Air does not appeal to me because of the compromises, if slash when Apple comes out with a folding iPhone and I have a choice between a folding iPhone that can turn into something that's, either the size of an iPhone or maybe more like the size of an iPad mini, or the iPhone Pro, um, it's going to be a tough decision for me.
Yeah,
It's going
it's
to be
gonna be
tough. So
awesome.
we'll see. Again, that's a year from now. We don't have that today, but I'm going to be watching that product introduction with a lot of attention, because I don't know which one I would prefer. Ugh.
Both you and I did get the iPhone 17 Pro. I got the normal Pro, you got the Max Pro. But one of the things that you continue to talk about is the camera capabilities on here. And I thought this was a good article. This is John Voorhees in Mac Stories, but he links to this story from Lux, which is a company that makes apps, right? I think is what their
Hmm.
main thing. But we talked about what is it, Austin Mann, when he goes and gets the new iPhone and he does all these shots. This story, the pictures coming out of this story, I'll have to yeah, here's this, they're testing here, just
Hmm.
incredible pictures. And I mean, they put it through the ringer like in all kinds of places on here, and just continues to impress me. I mean, not just me as a normal non-professional photographer who barely knows anything about f-stops and everything, but to impress professional photographers, like the way that apparently the iPhone 17 Pro is doing, is a pretty big feat.
Yeah. So Lux makes apps like Halide is probably their most famous. And
Halide, of
Halide
course,
is an app
yes.
that you would use instead of the built-in camera app. And the people at Halide, like they totally understand digital photography. And so their app will use, of course, it uses the Apple lenses that are on the iPhone, but they will, tap into features that maybe Apple is not even offering. And sometimes Halide will have a
Right.
feature that like a year or two later will actually come to the built-in camera app, but they sort of figure it out first. And then all sorts of filters and things like that to do it. So like they go deep. They really understand what the hardware can do. And so when they go in there and they look at the hardware, and for example, they say that the 2x camera, they say is really good, because they point out that
Yeah.
with the regular camera, just the 1x camera, which also uses 2x, they point out in here that it is a 48 megapixel camera, but you don't actually get normally 48 megapixel pictures. Apple takes the 48 megapixels and comes up with the best 24 megapixel
Oh,
image for
okay.
you. And so, and you end up getting a better picture that way. But so when you go to the 2x mode, you're just using like the middle part of it. But because it's such a high quality camera, that 48 megapixels, like
Hmm.
they say it is fair to call this an optical 2x, even though some people may say because you're cropping it, it should be considered digital, but it's really not
Oh,
digital. It really is
interesting.
optical.
Okay.
And then they were especially impressed in this post with the 4x camera, which of course
Yes.
could then become an 8x camera. And they point out that the quality of it is really good. And they point out something that I noted this when when I wrote my review, and when you and I talked about it, I said the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. 8x is a significant enough telephoto zoom that it truly gives you different pictures. And they give examples here where like you have one picture where you're way in the back and then another picture where you're really, really zoomed in. And
Yeah.
it's
That was
just
my favorite right
completely
here.
different. And it's from, that's a perfect one that you're showing right there because you can see the little box on the left. It's the
Look at
tiny,
that.
tiny little
You
part of
can't
it.
even
So
see a bird in that one. And then,
the
but
first
there is a bird and it captured it.
the first picture and the second picture are just literally completely different pictures that tell completely different stories.
Crazy.
And and sometimes when you just focus in on like one of their other pictures is like focusing on like one little part of a bridge or something, it's like that is just it's a different. And I wish I had the photographer's eyes. I don't have it, but sometimes I'll look at these award-winning pictures and I'm like, gosh, like this person was standing in the same place that I could stand, and yet they see something. They see this little
Yeah.
detail that
Yeah.
comes out with this just moving, incredible picture. And so you have the ability with the 8x camera because it is a very, impressive zoom, but also because it's a very high quality as well. So I enjoyed reading this post because these people really, really know what they're talking about, and it makes me more excited about the technology that I've got right here in my hand.
I like this first sentence here on the section. They're talking about the 8X. The overall experience of shooting a lens this long should not be this good.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're
Mm-hmm.
professional photographers. They know exactly what they're talking about. And it's that Apple is using both its very best hardware stabilization on this camera and software stabilization, as seen in features like action mode. Just really incredible. I'll make sure we have a link to the pictures here so you can look at them as well. Last week we talked quite a bit about the AirPods Pro 3 because again,
Mm-hmm.
I've been telling people the new iPhone is great, the new Apple Watch is great, but the new AirPods Pro 3 it blows me away. Like I just used them on flights this weekend and it's so much better noise cancellation. Like I found myself having to pull out my AirPod more often to hear like the steward, the flight attendant, or the
Mm-hmm.
pilot, because normally I could hear that through, and I couldn't this time. Anyway, great stuff. However, these are not the only earpods that Apple makes. We've talked about the Beats, and apparently, what is this? This is the Power Beats Fit. The update came out, and Juli Clover and again Dan Barbera does a good review of them as well.
Yeah, the Power Beats line is great if you want the Apple technology, but AirPod Pros are just not for you. And a lot of people do it. As much as I hear so many glowing reviews like yours and mine of the AirPods Pro 3, some podcasts I was listening to this week, the person saying, you know what, I'm going to go back to my AirPod Pro 2 because of the shape of my
Boo.
ear, these new tips just don't work for me. And that's the thing.
Okay,
Everybody's different.
that's fair.
And I've said this before. My wife was one of these people too. The AirPods Pro 2 just did not work for her ears. So she ended up getting the Power Beats Pro, which is it's the fits in your ear, but then it has a thing that sort of goes around your ear, so it really stays on. And if you're a
Right.
person that you just can't get an earbud to fit in your ear, that is a one good solution. So this is a different type of solution, also from Beats, called the Power Beats Fit. And the way that it works, as you can see when you're zooming in, is it's like an
Mm-hmm.
earbud, and it's got like a little wingtip on it that sort of goes out. And so that little wingtip, it doesn't go around your ear like the Power Beats Pro 2, but it fills up a little bit more of the space in your
The
ear
the
just to sort of keep
concha,
it
the
held in
concha of
there.
the ear.
Yeah. And I have tried this in the past. A long time ago, I remember that, it was either AirPods or AirPods Pro. It was one of these third-party things that you sort of attach to it, and it sort of fills it up. And it's the same idea of it. And I understand it. I mean, even though I never stuck with these, I was like, I see why someone would want to have this design because it keeps it more secure. And especially if you are vigorously working out, shaking your
Mm-hmm.
head,
Right,
you want it
right.
to be as
Jumping,
secure as
running.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
And both models of the Power Beats can do it. So this is the new one. So the Power Beats Fit is a new line. I don't think they had something called Power Beats Fit before this line. And then it also has active noise cancellation and a lot of the other features that you would expect, and good battery life and stuff like that. So it's just another option that's out there from Apple under the Beats brand. And for some people, this is just going to be the cat's pajamas. So you gotta see what's right for you.
It's also a better price. It's only
Hmm.
$200 here, which is
Yeah.
$50 less than the AirPods Pro 3. Let's just quickly talk about the Apple Watch. This is a great review. Apple Watch Ultra 3 from
Hmm.
Apple Insider. This is Wesley Hilliard. I just thought it was great. In fact, I just the first few things that I read in here that I completely agreed with. Apple Watch Ultra 3 is the first true update to the line in 2 years. So even if you're on an Apple Watch Ultra 2, you could consider an upgrade, but boy, I would be on the fence if you have a 2. I upgraded from an Ultra 1 to this Ultra 3. Very happy, extremely happy, I would say. But you asked me this last week, I think, too. I don't know that I can tell you that it was a must upgrade. I'm thrilled
Hmm.
that I did it, but it's not, there's not so much difference here. Like it's just almost small iterative updates on here, but it's good
Yeah.
enough. And again, I don't regret it. I love the Apple Watch Ultra 3. I've been using it now. I mean, just the fact that I've got the wrist flick and I can do the tap tap and all the other things. The screen is fantastic as always. Probably a little bit better. Like you said, I can see it's brighter, so I can see it, even in direct sunlight. I'm not sitting there thinking about it. I'm just glad that I can see the time when I need to see the time, whether I'm in, direct sunlight or not. Like I don't sit there
Hmm.
and think, oh, well, I'm so glad I can see this now. I don't think about it that way as much. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just, to me, this isn't as much of an impact as, of course, the AirPods Pro 3 have been for me.
And you talked about that last week. You talked about it a little bit this morning when you said that of all the new products this year, the one that excites you the most is the
Right.
AirPods Pro, not this one. And Wesley Hilliard, who I just want to mention, Wesley does fantastic reviews. I've been
He
so
really
impressed with him
does.
as a writer. But this is a very balanced review because he really does say, and I don't mean balanced in that it was forced to be. I mean like his conclusion is really on point with you. There are definite pros and there are some definite cons, and he points about it. And so if you're trying to decide if this is what if the Ultra 3 is good for you, you should absolutely read this review. A lot of it parrots what
Yes.
you've said, Brett. But and he points out that of course, if you're looking for that, you're going to be climbing mountains and doing all the scuba diving. Well, of course you want the, that goes
Right.
without saying. But if you're not in that category, if the only, rising altitudes that you do is working in an office building like me, he's like, think of the Apple Watch Ultra just as like sort of a more advanced version of the Apple Watch, and then decide are
Right.
those extra features something that you want? Because he points out like a pro is the battery life, which is amazing. I think it's funny. He says that the battery life is so extensive, it's almost too much battery life. It's like nobody even needs this much battery life, and he has a
Well, I
good
would
point
never
of
say
it.
that,
And
but yes, I agree.
yeah, and it's worth saying because like if you charge your Apple Watch every night like I do, and
Yeah.
if you maybe give it a little bit of a charge while you're taking a shower in the morning and stuff like that, for me it's totally enough. But if that's not you, if you really want the extra, well then that's the Pro and the other things. And if you need satellite, if you want the brighter, it's good. But he also points out that the experience does not differ that much from prior models, which is
Right.
the same thing
Right.
that you just said, that you
Yeah.
don't
Right.
have to feel like, maybe save your money if you're on the fence. This review might actually convince you that what you have now is actually good
Right.
enough.
Right.
And so that's the thing. It's just you're going to have to decide what is right for you. Now, if you have a really old model, if you've never used an Apple Watch Ultra and
Oh,
all of the cool features it
yeah.
has, well, then sure, this is the one to get. If you have an Apple Watch version 1, like you did, Brett, you got to sort of think about it. I do not. I love getting a new iPhone every year. I love it. But I certainly don't get a new Apple Watch every year or even every couple of years because I don't think there's a reason for it. Every year to year improvement is good, but incremental. Now, if you have an Apple Watch that's 5 years or more old, well, then yeah, you're going to love any of the new
Yes.
models, whether it's the 11 or
Right.
the Ultra 3 or any of them. So good, really good
I
review.
will
Really,
point
really
out
good.
one thing here. When I read this, I was like, yeah, I completely agree. I am a little jealous of the curved corners of your Apple Watch
Hmm.
10
And
and
I
the
love that
Series 11.
feature. Yeah. Hmm.
I know because if you're doing the high altitude, hiking Mount Everest, then I understand why the Apple Watch Ultra is more on the boxy or even I would even say like sharp corners up there. I know that they did that for several reasons, but I got to tell you, I'm not doing that. For the vast majority of the time, I'm wearing dress shirts, right, where my cuff needs to go over the watch, and I have to tell you, it sometimes gets jammed up. And he says the Apple Watch Ultra 3 and the Watch Series 11 have near identical displays, but the glass covers are shaped slightly differently. He goes, I think I prefer the curved glass of the series models, but the Ultra does seem to provide legibility advantages by being perfectly flat. Completely agree. I mean, in other words, I read that and I was like, yeah, like that hurts a little because that I would love to have the same size of the screen, which apparently I could if I got a Series 11, but it probably wouldn't jam up my cuff as much on my jacket or on my shirt because it has that curve on the corners there. Slight little issue there, but when I read that, to your point, he just really is good about pointing out some of the things that irk me as well.
I'll give you another example that's along the exact same lines. He speaks eloquently. He likes the fact that the digital crown on the Ultra has that sort of protective cover to it so that like if
Yes.
something hits
Yeah.
it, and he speaks of that as if it's a really good thing. When I used the Ultra for a little while last year, I
Uh-huh.
hated that feature, Brett. I did not like it because I felt like I could not spin the digital crown as easily. And I love spinning the digital crown. It's
Me
useful.
too.
It feels sort of
Yeah.
fun. And so, and in fact, I'm curious, you've been an
That's
Ultra
funny.
user for a while, but you used prior
Yeah.
models before. Do you,
Yeah.
like Wesley, do you prefer that it has protection, or do you not like that it's a little bit harder to spin, or it's just a little more, what's your viewpoint on that?
I guess honestly, because I've been doing this for so many years, I don't even think about it. Like
You
there's
don't.
no,
Okay.
I don't put on the normal watch, but I have to tell you, I do like it. I think because I can rest my finger on it, and there's enough. Like Apple did a very good job. Like when I spin, I'm just spinning the top portion of the
I hear
digital
you.
crown, of
Yeah,
course,
I
just
hear
like what
you.
you're
But
doing. I never like put my thumb and finger and try to spin it like that. I'm really
no,
just
me either.
spinning
Yeah.
with the
Hmm.
finger. Okay, so
Yeah.
again, I probably just because I've been using the Ultra for so long now, I don't really have a basis of comparison on that. But I don't mind it. I kind of like it. I like that it's there because I just feel like it potentially will keep more gunk out of it, But even though I still
Sure.
have to run it
Sure. Yeah.
underwater every once in a while. But yeah, it's been fine for me on that. We talked about Apple doing a few other things. I saw several stories just the last 2 or 3 days. They might be coming out with more. The M5 processor, we talked about some of the rumors when they did the announcement in September for the iPhone, and we got the new Apple Watches, we got the iPhones, and of course, we got the AirPods Pro 3, and there was no one more thing. There wasn't anything else, even though we had talked about their potential as could be. Well, now we've got some rumors, some leaks that we could have new processors with maybe new iPads, new
Yeah.
MacBooks. Interesting.
I mean, I will break this news. Right now, Apple sells an
Oh
iPad with an
boy.
M4 processor. I predict that they will have a new one with an M5, and I will also predict they will one day have an M6. You heard it here first. There you go. I
Hey.
mean, it's like we all know
Okay.
this is
Thank
coming.
you.
So it's just a
Do, do,
question
do,
of
do, do,
when.
do.
The big, we've always known the M5 was going to come. Apple had the new processor in the iPhone, and they're going to have something new for their computers and the iPads. It's just a question of when. Apple will often come out with these, like a new iPad, for example. It would make sense to come. Sometimes they do it in the spring, but sometimes they try to do it for the Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday buying season.
Yep. Yep.
And so
Yep.
it would make perfect sense to me to see new iPads with an M5 processor this month, October, maybe next month. And the leak is, somebody, this Russian YouTuber claims to have gotten models, and I think they make these in Vietnam, and so somehow maybe he got somebody at the factory at Vietnam to give him one, and who knows? Is it real? Is it not real? People debate over whether it really is what he says it is. But it would not surprise me if this is true, that there's going to be a new version of the iPad that looks very
Yeah.
similar to the current iPad Pro, but it has an M5 processor instead of an M4. It makes perfect sense. Apple will have a new version of its MacBook Pro that has an M5 instead of an M4. Makes sense. That one might not be till next year, but it makes perfect sense that that's in development. And they even say that there is a new version of a Vision Pro, which I've been using for a long time. I think my Vision Pro has an M2 processor, if I remember correctly, and that
Oh,
it might
so
go
you
up to an
do.
M5. So, but
Yeah.
but all of these leaks and rumors is that it would be the design would be the same of these things as what we have now. It would just have a faster processor. When it comes to the Vision Pro, the
Right.
picture that you're seeing is Apple has to apply to the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to have the radios and stuff inside of devices. And when
Mm-hmm.
Apple and other technology companies provide this to the FCC, it's supposed to be under wraps and secret. Um, Every once in a blue moon, the federal government doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I'm not going to get into political reasons of why that might be
Yep.
especially true this year. But somebody, if it appears that somebody at the FCC, took a whole bunch of things that were supposed to be private, and they, unfortunately put it in the public folder, and people on the internet
Uh-huh.
found it. And so, now just because this has been given to the FCC, that doesn't mean it's coming out tomorrow. This might not come out
Right,
until
right,
next year, but it
right.
does look like Apple is working on this. So anyway, on one sense, it's not news at all that Apple will update its products. But on the other
Right.
sense, with all the leaks that have been coming out this year, it makes me think that some of these things we'll probably see before the end of the year. And of course, Brett, there's other things we not expect, but that could come from Apple before the end of the year. We've long talked about like some sort of a home pop at the screen, a new version
Yes,
of an Apple
exactly.
TV. Eventually those things will be updated. Will it be calendar year 2025? Will it be 2026? Who knows? But it wouldn't surprise me if Apple has some more things up their sleeve before the end of this year.
Here's my prediction. When Apple does come out with the iPad Pro that runs the new M5 processor, it will probably do a good job running apps from Lit Software.
Hmm.
We want to thank Lit Software for sponsoring the show today. We've talked about them quite a bit, and everybody knows we're pretty big fans of the Lit Software apps. It is a whole suite, hence the name the Lit Suite, which includes Trial Pad, Transcript Pad, Doc Review Pad, and the brand new Timeline Pad. There's also Exhibits Pad. That's a very interesting kind of a niche
Hmm.
app there, which is really cool. And I've heard Tara and Ian talk about it quite a bit. But the Timeline Pad is just beautiful in the way that it can create some timelines. Trial Pad, you might consider by the name for trial presentation, Transcript Pad for annotating or designating transcripts and doing some
Hmm.
beautiful reports off of that. And the doc review pad is for reviewing documents and applying maybe Bates numbers and stuff if you have to do production. This is an entire suite. It's an annual cost that goes every year, obviously, tied to your iCloud account. And that is great if you just wanted to get your own copy of these apps. But Lit Software also offers an enterprise option on there as well. And so, Jeff, I know you've other attorneys at different firms where you can purchase. I think you have to have 10 licenses, or you need 10, at least 10. You start with that. And what's great about it is that then that company, the organization, the law firm, they can then distribute those licenses for the different apps to the different individuals instead of you having, it'll be tied to your cloud account. But Lit Software does a great job of making sure that you can move those licenses around so that everybody in the firm that needs a copy of these can get access to it.
Yeah, some people are solo attorneys. They do everything themselves, but some people are, I think, fortunate enough to work in a team because that's certainly what I prefer. I myself work for a large law firm that's got hundreds of attorneys, and it is so nice to be able to use these Lit Software apps and work with other people that have them too, because you can share like, the transcripts in a case, and, one person can, highlight, and it's more than highlighting. Obviously, Transcript Pad goes way beyond that because you're coding for
Right.
issues, and then you can share that with other team members. And rather than having like a single iPad that you would pass around, with the Lit Suite Enterprise program, you can roll out, at least 10 or more licenses firm wide. And so that way, everyone on the team for a case can have access to and use, the case file and the depositions and putting together the trial exhibits and stuff like that. So that when you have that one lead attorney, or maybe the two different attorneys, because many times in the trials that I watch, because I'm an appellate attorney, I'm often sitting there in the courtroom watching the trial team do their work. You'll have like your lead trial attorney that does the openings and closings, but another trial attorney will like handle certain witnesses, and you want to be able to have multiple people
Right.
that are using iPads. So with the enterprise program, it can be their personal iPad, or it can be an iPad that's owned by the firm. And you can even switch licenses. Like, for 6 months, it's going to be John that uses the Lit Suite license. And then
Right.
later on, it's going to be somebody else. And so then you can just, seamlessly use all of the features. And I'll also mention that, gosh, I'm just such a big fan of this company, and it's so fortunate to have them as a sponsor because they update these apps all the time. They're always adding new
Yes.
features. We talked about this rumor of an M5 iPad. You know what that's going to make a difference for is there's this feature in Transcript Pad where you can put a video that you get from the videographer for a deposition, and it will use the AI to like process the video and match it up with the transcript. And that's one of those few features, usually everything on my
Yes.
iPad is really fast, but that is one of those things that's so intense that I noticed when I moved up to the M4 iPad, those sorts of things would just work faster because, Transcript Pad can just totally
Absolutely.
take advantage of the processor. And I have no doubt that should there be an M5 version of the iPad, I'm sure this app's
Right.
going to be even faster and better because they're just always taking advantage of the technology, plugging into Apple stuff. So this is just such a fantastic thing. I will say that, you're showing the Lit Software website right now, which was recently
Uh-huh.
updated. And one of the things that they have is like they list some people that use it, some law firms and some companies. And I'm not going to reveal client names because that's confidential. But I will tell you, Brett, between you and me, that there is a
Yes.
company that's listed on this page. I'm not going to say who they
Oh,
are, that they are one of my
interesting.
clients, and they were in my office a while back, and they were talking to a big group of outside counsel, and they were talking about tools that they encourage us to use. And one of the people from the company is like, gosh, you know what y'all should really use is trial pad and transcript pad. I'm like, you're speaking
What?
to the choir. Like, of course
Yeah,
I was so
hello.
thrilled to have my client tell me I should be using this. Like, I should be telling you how awesome this
Right.
software is. So anyway, it's
Oh,
great
that's
stuff. So
fantastic. I
highly
love it.
encourage you to check it out.
And by the way, I just quickly say there is a 7-day free trial. So we tell this all the time to folks, Jeff. Go and try it out. Like in 7 days, if you can plan, just set aside 30 minutes or something like that. Once you get access to them, they're fully functional and operational. So you have a chance to try them all out. Great support resources on litsoftware.com. I still sometimes, even when people ask me questions, Jeff, I'll go to like the YouTube videos that
Oh
Ian
yeah.
puts up on here because they just help to remind me. And they've got a great little fact and stuff that you can go into. You can get those questions answered on there. In fact, I pulled this up here. By the way, for the enterprise program, if you log on for multiple years, like 2 or 3 years, there is a little bit of a discount that you can get on that. So you can ask Lit Software about that as well. In fact, you can email hello@litsoftware.com. Hello@litsoftware.com. And if you inquire about the Lit Suite, and let them know that you heard about it from the In the News podcast, you'll get an additional license for free. So if you get 10 licenses,
Wow,
you can
there
get
you go. I
11,
like that.
and that 11th license will be free. So just send an email, hello@litsoftware.com. Let them know that you heard uh, Brett and Jeff talk about it a little bit, probably too much, just because you can tell we're big fans of this. But let them know that you heard us talking about it and ask your questions. They're always happy to answer. We know Tara and Ian very well, and they're happy to answer questions that you have about all of this as well. And by the way, I just last thing I would quickly say is we keep talking about this in the context of an iPad, but because of the way that Apple allows the coding to go between iPad and the Mac, a lot of this will run on the Mac as well. And I find that to be really exciting because you can put a case, for example, in your iCloud Drive, and if you do it just right, and you just want to make sure you've got everything, all the I's dotted, you can then open up the case on your iPad and your Mac, and just be able to
Hmm.
share some of that information. If you're in front of your Mac, you can be doing it there versus on your iPad. It does not work on
Yeah.
Windows, but I just wanted to throw that out because if you have a Mac and you have an iPad, you get some additional capabilities. You actually get all of that software, and that's all included in the Lit Suite as well. Just wanted to leave
Yeah,
that
I don't want
on
this
there.
ad read to go too long, but I'll mention I've done that before because, like, if I'm working here in my office, I've got
Yeah.
my Windows PC and my iPad right next to me. But sometimes if I'm working at home at night, I don't have my iPad. It's downstairs in my briefcase, whatever, in my bag. But I'm there at my Mac, and like I'm working on a motion, and I want to quickly
Right.
see what a witness said in a deposition. That's fine because my Mac has a transcript pad on it, and I can open it
Nice.
up, look at the
Nice.
testimony, copy the quote. So anyway, good feature.
Thank you, Lit Software. Go to litsoftware.com or send an email to hello@litsoftware.com and let them know that you heard us talking about it. There's one more app that I wanted to point out here, Jeff, that I know you have been a big fan of for a long time as
Hmm.
well. They are not sponsors, but we can just quickly let people know. Goodnotes. Goodnotes. It's like one of the one things that the Lit Suite can't do. But you use Goodnotes along with all of the Lit Suite apps. I know because the way that you've shared some of your workflows before. But the Goodnotes app you have been using for a very long time. They just got gooder on doing some of this
Hmm.
stuff here.
So, Goodnotes is the app that I use for taking handwritten notes in meetings, in court, just keeping case file thoughts on and stuff like that. And there was a big change to the app in the last couple of weeks, and this post does a good job of describing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's an improvement. I'm still trying to kick the tires on it and see what I think.
Okay.
So first of all, they have new subscription plans, and whatever you had before has been moved to a new model. And I haven't gotten deep enough to know it, but suffice it to say, there are new plans that are out there. Second of all, they have some new features in it that I'm just sort of starting to wrap my head around. One that they are highly promoting is this whiteboarding feature so that you can have an infinite canvas if you need more space, up, down, left,
Oh.
right. I personally don't use use that much, but if you're into things like mind mapping and stuff like that, then this is something that
Yeah,
you would
yeah.
like because you never know what direction you're going to want to have your notes go out into.
Right. Or
And
even
then,
OneNote. I do that in
yeah,
OneNote a lot
sure,
too.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Many apps do that. Another feature that they've added, it's like sort of a new version of the app that is, I mean, I say that this is the app that you use for handwritten text with your Apple Pencil, but they have recognized that sometimes you want to just take notes by typing and you might maybe have a keyboard attached to your iPad. And so they have a new mode within Goodnotes that is made for text and it's made for like an outlining. It almost reminds me of like some of the Omni apps, stuff like that. I have just started to play around with it. I don't know if it's for me because I mean, I guess sometimes I do take typed notes and sometimes I just use the built-in notes app for that to be very
Yeah,
simple.
the
You
Apple
know,
Notes.
they
Right.
have like built-in headers and stuff like that so that you can organize things and move around things in an outline. I think it's ideal for a student or someone taking notes in a
Yes. Right.
class.
That's
And
what I
so
was
that's why
thinking.
they added this feature. Again, I looked at it and I'm like, for now, I don't know that it's for me, but if that does appeal to you, it's a brand new part of the app that really changes things. I do sometimes have, in fact, I frequently have typewritten notes, but within my GoodNotes. So I'm like, I'm taking handwritten notes, and then there'll be one part of it in the middle that I will like copy and paste something from like a statute or a case.
Gotcha.
And so I do
Yeah.
have text
Yeah.
with the notes, but this is different. This is a completely different sort of notebook that would be text-based. So anyway, suffice it to say, there's a
Okay.
lot that's new. And as with any change, sometimes it's like, oh, do I like the change or not? You know, but
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
they've done some changes here, and this article does a good job of running through what's different.
Let's do a quick in the Vision segment. You
Hmm.
mentioned in the Vision Pro, and who knows? Maybe in a few weeks we'll see sort of an update. But both Jason Snell and Dan Morin over at Six Colors gave sort of their perspectives
Hmm.
on the, I guess, the state of the Vision OS. Quick comments here from you on Jason Snell and Dan Morin's comments here.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything, just about everything Jason says is what I agree. I agree with. Vision OS 26. It's a nice step forward. I really love what they have done with widgets that can stay in one place. And I have totally gotten to the point where, in my house, I'm typically wearing my Vision Pro either in my living room or in the room that my TV is in. I just sit in that couch, don't turn the TV on. I watch something in my Vision Pro instead. And when I do that, like I have like a clock on the wall and I've got like another little widget that has my battery life. And it's so, I mean, you can see an example in this picture here that Jason's got one
Right,
above his
right.
door. It's gotten to the point that, and I know this is silly, but like sometimes I'm walking around my house, Brett, and I want to know what time it is, and I'll glance to the wall to see the clock. I'm like, oh no, that clock is not in the real world. That is
Yes.
just in my imaginary world
That's
from my
great.
vision, and so then I have to, goodness, have to look at my watch. How horrible is that? But it's so convincing and it works so well. So there's all these new features. So if you happen to have a Vision Pro, it's a nice review. The Vision has been in the news this week because there have been rumors, and I don't want to give them too much credit. So who knows? Again, Mark Gurman talking about what Apple's coming out with next. Are they focusing on a new version of the Vision Pro that's going to be radically different, like maybe a Vision as opposed to a Vision Pro? Or is Apple
Right.
focusing on something that's more like glasses that would just superimpose things on top of the real world? We'll see what comes out. I mean, clearly Apple is working on that. And the part of Jason's review that I really agree with is that Apple, I mean, they have a million things they can do to make this operating system better. And so every time they have updates, it's like the early days of the iPhone. There was so much to
Yeah,
add,
exactly.
cut and paste, stuff like that. They were still in those
Exactly.
early days, and all of these building blocks that they're adding are going to mean that whenever they do come up with something that's for the masses, it's going to be so much better because they've already done the work. They've had, real world
Hmm.
experience. So that's that.
Yeah.
And that sort of ties right into Dan Morin's review because Dan Morin doesn't own a Vision Pro, but he has one on loan for Apple for like 6 months. And so he's been using it for a while. And he talks about like if you want to get work done with the Vision Pro, there are some barriers, you can do it,
Hmm.
but like one of the big barriers that he points out is some third-party apps support it, and that's fantastic, but others don't. Like, if you use Dropbox, if that's part of your practice, there is no native Dropbox app.
Mm.
Now, can you go to the Dropbox website? Sure, but that's cumbersome. I mean, nobody would use Dropbox on an iPad if you had to use the website every time you wanted to access your documents. And so that's cumbersome. And we need more, we have some Microsoft apps, we don't have others that we need. So I hope it will get better. But he also points out in the review that one thing that works really well, is when you take a compute like a Mac and you or an iPad and you have the screen displayed in that mode in the Vision Pro. So suddenly it's this huge
Oh,
mega screen. And,
yeah.
I can totally see a future world where, and again, this is not the near future, but, it doesn't matter how many monitors you have on your desk at your office. Maybe you have just one monitor. Maybe you have no
Always
monitors,
want more.
but instead you take your glasses and you put them
Yeah,
on, and suddenly you
right.
have huge monitors that you can
Huge
move
screen.
around and
Yeah,
make as big or as
yeah.
tall or as short as you want. You know,
That's
I
great.
have no doubt that that day is coming, and the things that Apple is doing with the Vision Pro and the Vision OS are moving us there. It's just a question of when.
Let's go to the in the show segment just
In
real
the
quick.
show.
If you like peanuts, you're in luck. I
Yeah.
did I read like I think the Peanuts cartoon is 75 years old this year or something
75th
like that now.
anniversary.
I
Yeah,
mean, it
yeah.
is. Oh, there it is, 75th anniversary. Uh, I think you said in your post today, because I learned this from you. Once you realized that there was a Peanuts screensaver for your Apple TV,
It's
you
so
didn't
good.
change it. Same in this household. I mean, and we enjoy it. In fact, I enjoy. I sit there watch because I'm like, what's Woodstock going to do next, and how is he going to fly, and what is Snoopy going to be sleeping on next? I mean, it's so whimsical. I love having it on there,
And
and
isn't
that's
it
great.
amazing,
And
Brett, how
yeah,
many new ones they have? Like almost
it
every
is.
week, there's a new one there.
It's
It's like
new. It's something new.
it's great. They are not just repeating the same one. But just this week, I saw one where all the characters are sort of sitting on a hill, looking out in the distance. I'm like, I haven't seen this one before. And what's really cool about it is, Peanuts. I grew up with Peanuts. Many of us did. The Christmas special, the Halloween special, things that were so standard.
Uh-huh.
And of course, those come out every year. And I'm jealous that I now have bratty teenagers. I no longer have the cute little kids that want to watch the Peanut shows with me. But Apple is still. But
Same.
there was this long period of time where we did not have a lot of new Peanuts content, and then. 5 years ago, Apple teamed up with them, and we have new
Hmm.
shows and everything else. I wish I had more little kids around me to watch them with me. But what I do have is my screensaver, so I'm appreciating it that way. And so I think Apple has been a really good steward for the streaming version of the Peanuts
Absolutely.
universe. And I am thrilled that they've extended it for another 5 years. I hope they continue to extend it forever because it's fantastic content for children. It's delightful content for adults. I want more Peanut stuff, and I'm happy that they are in the Apple system.
Not just that, even the Apple Watch. I mean,
Yeah.
that Snoopy Apple Watch face is still pretty
Mhm.
amazing too. I
I'm
don't
I'm
think my
looking at him
wife
right
does it
now. There you
anymore.
go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
he's so
You've
cute.
got it on
I
right
I don't
now.
I don't I don't have
She'll
it on
switch
all
it
the
out.
time, but when I do, like look at it just makes me
It's
smile. It's
fun.
great.
Well, if you like the Schmigadoon series, it's coming to Broadway, which
Oh
to me
yeah.
just makes sense because I felt like watching the show, it came from Broadway. Now it's going to go back to Broadway. I don't know how that's working, but it's still I'm pretty happy with it. I enjoyed the series when it came out. The
I
the
did.
the sequel, I think I only watched maybe one or two episodes, but the first little series, the season, I thought was great.
First season was great. Second season was almost as good, perhaps not as good. It's frustrating to me that they've written season three. They've got all the songs done it, but
I
Apple
remember
Apple
you said
canceled
that
it, so
before.
it's not
Yeah,
there. But they it came to, I want to say it was Washington D.C. They did like a stage version of Schmigadoon, and I mean it's produced by Lorne Michaels and stuff from SNL, and it got some good reviews, and so now they're coming to Broadway. And this is the second time this has happened because there's this other show that used to be on TV many years ago called Smash, which was a TV show
oh
about
yeah.
making a Broadway show. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. I thought it had good songs. And then Smash has come full circle, and I think it's on Broadway or about to come on Broadway or something. And so this is the same way. So on Broadway in 2026, you'll be able to see a version of Schmigadoon that has songs from the show. Plus, I think there's one or two originals in there. And again, I thought Schmigadoon was great. I'm sure that being on Broadway, they're going to get top-notch incredible
Yeah,
performers to do
it'll be
it.
fun.
And so
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be watching a show in Broadway in the next 6 months or so, but if I am, I might check it out. So I
And the last little video that you included in your post was, I mean, it's only maybe 3 minutes long, but it's all of the new
think it's 30
shows
seconds
coming to,
long. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, even shorter. Apple TV Plus, all the new shows, some of the things coming, which I just thought was great because man, they pack a lot into that little video there. But always excited to kind of see what fall is going to bring for some of the shows that we've been following for a long time.
Yeah, and there's lots of good stuffs coming out. Something from Emma Thompson. Today is that movie, the Lost Bus, which is based on a real story that has actually
Right.
been getting some pretty good initial reviews. So that might be a movie that I sit down and watch. And then next week, this one called The Last Frontier. I think that's going to be a good show. I haven't seen reviews of it yet, but from the previews, like this could be a really cool sort of action adventure, prison break sort of thing where prisoners are on a plane that escape, and it looks like it could be really good.
Well, let's go to In the Know.
In the
And
know.
because it's a great segue for me, because I was just flying United Airlines coming back from Chicago last night, and I noticed on the little screen on the front on the seat back there, they were advertising Apple TV Plus shows, and I'm like, well,
Huh.
I guess I have to, make sure that you have a subscription to be able to watch it. But no, if you get on a United flight, Apple TV Plus content is available for free in the seatback screens. Now, I've noticed, and probably many of you, if you travel, you also will. That could depend on actually maybe the actual plane that you're on. Some of
Sure,
them aren't
sure.
as good, and some of the smaller screens. But if you get more of a modern day screen, it's great. I mean, you could sit there and you don't have to log in. You don't have to have a subscription, but you could watch some of these shows. I don't think they have everything in there, but they've got, like, the Ted Lasso and Slow Horses. I mean, all the Severance, Shrinking, most of the series that we keep talking about that have gotten sort of the most rave reviews are all available. So the next time you fly United, just know, hey, if you don't have an Apple TV Plus subscription, just get on a plane, get a flight across the country, and you'll be happy watching Severance or Silo or Ted Lasso on the way.
I like that. That's a good tip. My tip is, Apple is always improving the Messages app, and there are some things they add to it that do nothing for me. For example, I know there's a feature that you can have like a picture as a background in a Messages discussion, whatever. That doesn't do anything for me. But one of the changes that came to Messages over the years is this Tapbacks feature, and I got to tell
Oh,
you, I use
yes.
it all the time,
All
Brett,
the
all the
time.
time, because and especially if you don't want to respond to somebody, but you don't want to ignore them, so you just want to give them like a little just a thumbs up or a happy face. I love that you can now use not just the built-in 5 or 6 that they used to have, but you can use any emoji for it. So like if the
Yeah.
appropriate response to a tap app is a picture of a slice of pepperoni pizza, you can do that, whatever you want.
Boom.
But my one little tip is that for a while, the way that I had been doing tap backs, and this does still work, is if you looking at like a little message bubble and you
Uh-huh.
hold your finger down on it for a second
Tap
or
and
two,
hold. Yeah.
then tap and hold, then the pop-up menu comes up and it has the tap backs at the top, and then it has other things that you have underneath it,
That's the
other
only
options and
way.
stuff like that. But another way that you can do it, and like once I saw this, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this all the time, is double tap. Double tap on a specific message.
What?
And when you do that, it just brings
There
up
it
the
is.
tap back menu, not everything else, just the tap back menu.
Oh.
And so since I use tap back all the time, this is now the fastest way to do it. You have a message and you just want to give a quick little reaction, just
Oh,
tap,
that's
tap,
great.
and then you can choose one of the built-in ones, or if you want to select something from the full list of emoji, you can do it. So it's a little bit faster, and it makes me love the tap back feature, which I already loved even more. And again, I don't think
Oh,
that this double
wow.
tap feature is new. I think maybe it was even before iOS 26, but it was only in the last few
I've never
weeks that
used it.
I saw somebody mention it on Mastodon, and I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. And now I'm using it all the time. So that's my tip.
I've always tapped and hold, tapped and
Hmm.
held. I've never done the tap. And for some reason, I think the double tap is easier for me.
Yeah, that's
Because
the
if
thing.
you
It's
tap and
faster.
hold,
Yeah.
sometimes I move, my
Yep.
finger moves around or something like
Yep. Yep.
that,
Yep.
and then it's like, but tap tap, I can do that much quicker. Oh, thank you, sir. That is brilliant. I like that. Well, good show today. Thanks as always for talking. We also want to say thanks to our sponsor, Lit Software. You can go to litsoftware.com to find out more, or just send an email to hello@litsoftware.com. Let them know that you heard Brett and Jeff talk about the Lit Suite apps for your iPad and Mac. More stuff to talk about over this next week. Maybe new products by next week. I don't know if it'll happen that quick, but it could. We can hope. Whatever, regardless of what happens, we'll talk with you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye bye, everybody.